Okay, guys, today's episode is about this man right here. Okay? We're going to get into this guy right here in a second. We just have to lay the foundation of what's going on in the country right now. And we'll get right back to this guy in a second. So, right now we're in the middle. I don't know where we are in it, but we're in a crime surge in this country. Murder is out of control in this country. It's spiking everywhere. Everywhere across the board, ever since the defund the police movement started May 26th of 2020. Crime and murder has gone through the roof. And it's predominantly affected the black community. However, it's starting to affect the Asian community. Not because Asians are being attacked because they're Asians, but because there's more attacks, crimes, carjackings, shootings, everything going on right now, that Asian people are starting to be attacked more, just like black people are being attacked more, just like white people are being attacked more, just like Hispanic people are being attacked more. The difference is, when it comes to Asians, everything's considered a racial attack, okay? Everything's considered Asian hate or hate crime now, because black people, they're seeing that black people, they got black people in pocket. The Democrats see they got black people in pocket. Black people are going to vote for the Democratic Party, whatever. So they're working on other races. They've set you to the side, and now they're working on other races. There's going to be a lot more Asians coming to this country, so they're laying the groundwork for a mass Asian population coming into the United States. So what's happening is, blacks have been set to the side by the Democratic Party. They have no use for you anymore. No matter what's going on, you're going to vote Democrat. So they're wisely focusing on other groups, the Latinos, or the Latinx, or whatever you want to call it, with the immigration, with the DACA and all that stuff, with the border, loosening up the restrictions at the border, and the Asians, which creating this civil rights movement for Asians, where not anything criminal that happens to a white person is just a crime. Anything criminal that happens to a black person is just a crime. But if something criminal happens to an Asian person, then it's a hate crime. If the same thing that happens, can anybody tell me that if this happened to a black person, would this be considered an a hate crime? If a black guy had been robbed of $15,000 at a bank, this guy was, I think he was the drop. He was the money drop at one of these restaurants or nail salons or something, and they followed him. He went and picked up the money, and he was making a drop, or he's making a pickup or something, and some criminals got the drop on him, and they followed him to where he had the money at, and then they beat him up and took the money, which is a terrible thing. But this is being considered a hate crime. This is one of the attacks. When they say there's been a spike, 3,000 such and such attacks in America against Asians ever since Donald Trump called the pandemic, said it came from China. Ever since he called it the Kung Flu, all these attacks against Asians have started. And they've increased. And it's because of Donald Trump. And this is one of them. And many of them are like this. Yes, you have the ones where some crazy guy will push some Asian guy down, just like some crazy guy will will bite a sister's eye out in a liquor store. I mean, these things happen to all races, but you would be shocked at how many of them are like this. I did a video, several videos on my other channel about this. Make sure you subscribe to my other channel, Living Room Gangsta. I'll be going live on there tomorrow, doing a long live stream tomorrow during the around noon. So make sure you guys check in. All right. So you would be shocked at how many of these Asian attacks you're hearing about are robberies, where they find out somebody's doing the drop at one of these restaurants or somebody's doing the drop at one of these places, and they go rob them. Now, what you're also starting to see, other than the Asian community being greatly affected by this crime surge, is you're seeing the white communities also being greatly affected, but they're not getting the same protections. They're not getting the same outcry. They're not getting the same hashtags and the movement and the celebrity. The celebrities aren't getting behind the white community. It's like, take Fargo, for instance. Fargo is a historically dominated, almost all white town. One of my favorite movies. I love Fargo. That was one of my favorite movies. If you haven't seen the movie Fargo, make sure you go check it out. Fargo came out in 1995. Excellent movie. But Fargo is a very, very white town. Recently, there's been an influx of other groups. Not a lot, but a small influx of other groups. And those groups are starting to increase the crime. Now, these stats right here are from the previous surge. But the new surge is even bigger than this surge in towns like Fargo. So you're having the criminal element in this country. We're not going to say any. If you've subscribed to this channel, you already know who that is. You're having the criminal element in this country also preying on white people.
Again, with the man Rochester police say was set on fire last Friday. He has died. The man was in his 50s, and police have yet to release his identity. Officers say that man was burned over 70% of his body after being doused with an ignitable liquid and set on fire. At the time, police say he was sitting in a chair in his apartment on Lyle Avenue in the city. A 14-year-old and 16-year-old have been charged with both assault and arson, but the police department is working with the district attorney to upgrade those charges.
They hung around in the neighborhood, and if anybody knows that neighborhood, everybody kind of knows everybody. So the suspects certainly knew Stephen.
2 teenagers are now charged with murder after police say they set a man on fire inside his home.
That man, Stephen Ammenhauser, died at 4 o'clock this morning.
Police arrested a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, and in just the last hour, we confirm that the 14-year-old has been arrested 3 times in the past 7 months. Let's go back live to the Public Safety Building with our Chief Investigative.
How often do I tell you about the amount of times these teens have been arrested? It's catch and release. I want to scream when I hear somebody say, the prison, the pipeline, they're always putting our kids in. When a white teen gets arrested, he gets probation. When a black teen gets arrested, he gets a phone call to his mother and he's home in a few hours. Next time somebody starts that sentence, when a white teen gets in trouble, he gets probation. And then you say when a black teen gets in trouble, he's home in a few hours. And he's arrested again the next week.
14-year-old has been arrested 3 times in the past 7 months. Let's go back live to the Public Safety Building with our Chief Investigative Reporter, Berkeley Bree. Burke?
Hey, Deanna, listen to this. I'm going to have to read this to you because here's the list. 14-year-old Adriel Riley Jr. was charged with robbery in Gates in September. He was charged by the city of Rochester in December. Gates police say he was caught in a stolen car in January. There was a juvenile delinquent warrant issued for him on March 5th. But on Saturday, Rochester police say he and a 16-year-old doused a man with flammable liquid and set him on fire. That man's name is Stephen Ammenhauser, and he lived in a duplex on Lyle Avenue near Murray Street. I listened to the police and fire radio calls from Saturday. Based on those calls, just before he was set on fire, we know that he went to a grocery store across from his apartment. That was around 12:20 Friday afternoon. I went to that store today, and the clerk told me they turned over all of their security video to police. Police say Ammenhauser went back to his apartment, sat down in his chair, and that's when he was set on fire. Here's the head of major crimes for RPD in the last 45 minutes.
You know, seeing the pictures of this guy and then knowing that he has no family around just to speak for him, I can't. This is one that I'll remember. You have a few others. Charlotte Lahr, if anybody remembers her, who was beaten to death in her liquor store. That was horrible. I mean, I go down the list of other ones, but this was bad.
Do you know what would have prompted it?
You know, Berkeley, I wish I could answer that question. I don't.
Now, the name of the 16-year-old is Xavier Perry, and police believe the two teenagers will be arraigned in youth court here in Rochester tomorrow. You heard Frank Umbrino say that Mr. Ammenhauser has no family. Police say that he was born in Texas. He was adopted there in Texas. He moved to Rochester. His wife passed away recently. His girlfriend died in October. The man has no family around to mourn him at this moment. We're live in downtown Rochester. Berkeley Bree News 10 NBC.
So tragic on so many levels.
When that news anchor said, this is so tragic on so many levels, you know what she meant. She feels sorry for those kids that set this guy on fire. That's who her sympathies lie with. She feels sorry for those kids. That's the level. She probably feels more sorry for those kids, these woke news anchors, these people in the media. That's why this channel is so important, because we feel sorry for the victims. We feel sorry for the victims of crimes. We support the victims. So make sure that you support this channel via PayPal, Super Chat, if you're watching this during the premiere, Cash App, the $5 challenge. It's very simple to do. Click that button, a few buttons, and make that donation and take the $5 challenge. Support channels like this. And if there are other channels like this, support them too. I don't think there are, but definitely support this one, because these are the true faces of America and what's going on right now. People like this and other people I've covered in previous videos or videos I'll do in the future.
So that we don't end up with a pipeline to Attica.
Two teenagers are charged with murder in the death of a man set on fire. When they were arrested together by Gates Police 2 months ago, Gates PD charged their parents.
The Gates police chief says the charge was for not supervising their children and not knowing where they were.
But 6 weeks after those tickets were written, Rochester police say the same two teenagers lit a man on fire and he died 3 days later.
So, the police did their job. They arrested the parents. They arrested the parents when these kids were caught a few months earlier. And I have no problem with that. I wonder what you guys think. These little feral teens out here running around. You've seen all the stories I've done about the 12-year-olds doing the carjackings and the 14-year-olds the carjackings and the 15-year-olds kidnapping people and taking them to the ATM machine. I actually like that policy. If Kamala Harris can lock up parents in San Francisco when she was the district attorney for when their kids didn't go to school. I think you should be able to lock up parents when their kids are terrorizing the community. But it still didn't work, which shows you how bad things are. Don't stop doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. But it just shows you it still didn't work. So if you do nothing, if you don't address this problem at all, I mean, gosh. But when you address it, it still is not guaranteed to work.
Two teenagers are charged with murder in the death of a man set on fire. When they were arrested together by Gates Police 2 months ago, Gates PD charged their parents.
The Gates police chief says the charge was for not supervising their children and not knowing where they were.
But 6 weeks after those tickets were written, Rochester police say the same two teenagers lit a man on fire and he died 3 days later. News 10 NBC Chief Investigative Reporter Berkeley Breen is live at the Hall of Justice. Burke?
Hey, Brett, the teenagers ages 16 and 14 pled not guilty to murder in a virtual court hearing from the Children's Detention Center. The prosecutor in the case told the court that this was a brutal and vicious crime. When the same two teenagers were caught in a stolen car and arrested 2 months ago in Gates, the police went after their parents. First, let me tell you about the victim. Stephen Ammenhauser grew up in Texas. He lived alone on Lyle Avenue after his longtime girlfriend died in October. Police say Ammenhauser died 3 days after two teenage boys doused him with flammable liquid and set him on fire. In a virtual court hearing that I joined today, the 16-year-old Javion Perry yelled out, "I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I told them." Gates police say Perry and 14-year-old Adriel Riley Jr., the other teen charged with murder, were arrested together in January for having a stolen car.
We called their parents, and parents came in. Neither of them knew where their kids were. In our opinion, that was their failure to supervise their kids.
So, Gates charged Perry's mother and Riley's father with endangering the welfare of a child. Gates police chief says the policy started 3 years ago when New York reformed the way minors are handled after they get arrested.
And let's start holding somebody accountable. And not that we want to put them in jail, but it's about waking up somebody to say, hey, you're the parent, okay? The child's 14, the child's 16. You have a job to do.
Is that working, do you think? Ticketing parents?
I don't know, because we've been doing this for about 3 years, and we've probably done it about 8 or 10 times in the past 3 years.
Before the court hearing, I went to Perry's house and Riley's house. Riley's sisters opened the door.
I'd like to talk to Adriel's mom or dad.
They said their mother declined to talk. So I did some research on this issue today. There are basically mixed reviews on whether or not charging parents for things their children are accused of doing works. Riley's father and Perry's mother are scheduled to be arraigned on their endangering the welfare of a child ticket in Gates next Tuesday night. We're live at the Hall of Justice, Berkeley Breen, News 10 NBC.
Burke, thank you. We learned the victim in that case, Steve Ammenhauser, has no family in the Rochester area. That prompted so many responses from you. You were wondering how you can help or attend his funeral service. When it comes to expenses, we've now learned from County Legislator Vince Felder that Monroe County will be paying for the service. They're working with RPD and a neighborhood church to make the arrangements. We're expecting to get more updates.
R.I.P. Steve Ammenhauser.